Hello, everybody, and welcome to Quick to Politic, the social commentary show. I am your host, Ernestine Lyons, and I am very excited to have a particularly special guest. We have the illustrious Kyra Harris Bolden, Esquire. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, milady. And she is a state representative, and she is currently running for one of the highest courts in the state of Michigan, Michigan Supreme Court. And she is on your ballot. Remember to flip it over to the nonpartisan positions and vote Kyra Harris Bolden on Tuesday. And so, yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on, and I just want to acknowledge that I am in my nursery because my office was co-opted by my 11-week-old. So we turned my office into a nursery. So if you're wondering why there are giraffes and things, that's why. So I am State Representative Kyra Harris Bolden. I currently represent Michigan's 35th House District, which includes the communities of Southfield, Lathrop Village, Beverly Hills, Bingham Farms, and Franklin. I can't say that 10 times fast if provoked. But I'm a lifelong resident of Southfield, which means I'm a lifelong resident of the great state of Michigan. Went to Grand Valley State University for undergrad, went to the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law for law school, practiced as a criminal defense attorney, then transitioned to becoming a judicial law clerk for the Honorable Judge John A. Murphy in Wayne County Third Circuit Court. And then was a civil litigator with Lewis and Monday, which is one of the oldest and largest Black-owned law firms in the country, and practiced in several areas of civil law before I thought about who's making these laws. Really, I just had the questions, because when you're going through your law practice, and every lawyer has had these questions, because you see how the law affects your clients, you see how it affects Michiganders. And I thought that if I could be at the table, at the forefront of this language, that I could lend a voice to what I was seeing in the courtroom. And so I decided to run for office in 2018. And to my surprise, for the open seat, I had 5 opponents. So there were 6 of us in this race, and I had never run for office. And, there comes a time where you just have to think about, is this something I want to do? I had taken leave from my job, so I didn't have an income. I'm knocking doors 24 hours, not 24 hours, but 7 days a week at this point. And we ended up winning my 2018 election with 45% of the vote against 5 opponents, which is pretty unheard of. But, I like to say, when I put my mind to something, it's you're going to get all of me, all of
right,
it.
all of the energy. And I know, like, even with this campaign, you said, I may be expecting, but I'm going to run a campaign. And you have, like, I've seen you everywhere, and you're just like nonstop.
I had to tell somebody, I will be the hardest worker, pregnant or not. I mean, it doesn't matter. And I would like to say that that's true. And that is, that's no shade to Justice Bernstein, who is a very, very hard worker. But we hit the ground running, and we've been able to get 5 bills passed into law. And I sit in the minority in the legislature. And so that is a really great accomplishment, to get 5 bills signed into law and serving for 4 years. There are some people that never get any bills passed into law. And so I have really done really good work to work with the other side of the aisle, to gain respect in my caucus as well as the other caucus. And one thing about me and where my thirst for justice comes from is when I was in college. So I didn't even want to be an attorney. I never really sought this until my great-grandmother told me the story of my great-grandfather. And in 1939, he was lynched in Tennessee after asking a store owner for a receipt. And a lynch mob ensued, and he was beaten and castrated and thrown into the local river.
Oh, wow.
And the coroner deemed it an accidental drowning. And there's a documentary about this called Accidental Drowning. And as a result, his murderers walked free. And so we've all heard these stories about Jim Crow and lynching and slavery. But I didn't know that that had impacted my family until I was an adult. And then I felt really compelled to get involved with our justice system because government sanction and justice was the norm at some point in our history. And we can easily slide back if you don't have the right people in positions of power. And so I've practiced in many different areas of our law and as well as making law because I'm just trying to find my place and how I can work best within our justice system so that Michiganders see equal justice under the law. And so that's kind of been my mission since I graduated college and went to law school. So that's been my journey and why I'm so passionate about doing this. And who sits on the Michigan Supreme Court matters because it's the last word. It's the last word on many important issues, but there's nowhere else to go. When you have a case, you appeal to the Court of Appeals. The Michigan Supreme Court only picks a finite amount of cases to take up, which are really important cases. And after that, that's it. When the Michigan Supreme Court makes a determination,
That's the law of the state. That's the law of the land, for us. The buck stops with you guys.
Buck stops with the Michigan Supreme Court. So I think it's important to have justices that believe in equal justice under the law and that believe that liberty and justice for all means something to every Michigander. And so that's why we're running for Michigan Supreme Court.
Hey, all right. You guys heard it. You heard it right here. And, with that is a very illustrious background. And I feel like you didn't waste any time after college, being a law clerk and, just, doing everything, all the things, 5 bills against 5 opponents. And that's the thing, I've worked as a policy staffer in the legislature, and I know how difficult it can be to, bills die, on the floor in committee. And, so it's just so important for folks to realize, and I think that I've started having this podcast to have these political conversations about the local level, races that matter, because there's so many people who don't know the difference between a congressperson and a state rep and a state senator, and what your senators who represent you in Washington do, and how you can get their support to change the laws. And I'm so glad that you became a lawyer, because you've been doing amazing work in the House. And then I want to, hopefully we all want to see you, continue this great work, in the Michigan Supreme Court. And so you kind of answered most of the basic questions I had about your background. And so I kind of want to delve right into a question you kind of touched on a little bit. We live in very polarized times. And, I just think that I've always known the Supreme Court to be this impartial group of folks who, especially the federal Supreme Court, when you think about, how you have no idea what they stand for or what their personal lives are like, and, what their political opinions are. You just know that they're there to make legal decisions. And, these Supreme Court decisions should be, just people thinking about the law, and they should be just. But I think we're so polarized. It seems that even, people's opinions come through. And I think that even the Dobbs decision was, kind of people's personal opinions kind of coming through, as opposed to looking at the law and looking at who it impacts, and is it serving everybody, no matter what you believe. And so how does one remain impartial, particularly in times of such polarization, and just interpret the law? It's not about what you believe, your spiritual beliefs. It's not about your personal, opinions, and just uphold justice and, just interpret the law. How does one do that? And how would you navigate those spaces when there are things you care about as a woman and as a woman of color? So how does one do that?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, especially with me being a partisan elected official. I get this question a lot. But what I will say is, number one, I was trained as a neutral. So, my first experience is working for a judge and seeing the law under neutral eyes and a neutral lens. So researching for myself, and drafting opinions or drafting memos to have the judge read, and we would do a lot of discussion. And one thing I think was incredibly helpful is that my judge said early on in my training that he didn't want me to read plaintiff or defendant's brief. He wanted me to research the law for myself because he didn't want me to get tainted with other people's opinions about what the law said. He wanted me to figure out what the law said and then have a conversation with him and then read the briefs after. And so that has always been my approach, throughout my career. That's even my approach as a legislator. And so I look for issues that would help Michiganders. So if you look at the bills I've been able to get passed into law, and most of the bills that I have sponsored have been in conjunction with the Republican chair of Judiciary. And so we're talking about an amendment to the Wrongful Imprisonment Compensation Act. So now more Michiganders have access to the compensation if they are wrongfully convicted. We're talking about the Address Confidentiality Act passed into law, which shields your address if you have been a survivor of sexual assault and violence with the Attorney General's office. Some other boring bills, but one bill I like to cite because it was a singular bill. So that means that there were no other sponsors on the bill, was an amendment to language for a liquor license bill. And it doesn't seem like a big deal, but I think it helps economic development. But these are issues that I find to be nonpartisan. And if you look at our votes, 98% of the issues that we vote on are either bipartisan or, in my opinion, nonpartisan. We are all working towards what does Michigan look like, for the best. I think, most of us go and they just want Michigan to be better, right? And I think in interpreting the law, I think it's helpful to have the mindset or to know what goes into making the law when you're talking about statutory interpretation. I think that is a very important perspective to make sure is represented on the Michigan Supreme Court. But like I said, throughout my career, I have worked with people that have different opinions, backgrounds, perspectives than me. But I think the most important thing is listening to people, making sure they're seen and heard in our judicial system. Everything is not going to work out however everyone wants, but did you have a fair opportunity to be heard? Were you seen by the court? Were you heard by the court? And have an opportunity to put on your case before the court. Access to justice is so important. And so that's the type of justice I will be. I will evaluate each case on a case-by-case basis for its uniqueness, and interpret the law as written and in conjunction with our state constitution. And so when you become a judge or a justice, you have to leave your personal opinions aside, and interpret the law to the facts that are ahead of you. It can be a mental leap. I don't think it's that much of a mental leap for me, again, because I was trained as a neutral very early on in my career. But I hope to work with my colleagues on the Michigan Supreme Court and listen to their perspective, even if we don't necessarily come to the same conclusion at first, because you never know how someone else thinks about something that can influence your perspective as well. And so I think listening to other people, listening obviously to the litigants, but also listening to each other and our perspective is incredibly important.
Right. I think that's beautifully said, because, at the end of the day, you really just want to walk away from, a solution is like, okay, did I apply the law? Did I look at this, from a, neutral perspective and try to understand every angle, and then even have an understanding moment of like listening to it from different perspectives. So I think that is really important, not only in our lawmakers, but, our folks in the courts, and so like you learned this early on from Third Circuit Court. And I think that it's just important for all of us. And even as granular as the levels of government get, from municipal government to the state level, I think it's really important, because those decisions are not partisan. The smaller and the lower levels you get in government, it's really not something that's going to really tear people apart in the ways in which we think. People think politics are, they use it as a dirty word, but it's like, well, no, we're actually deciding things about like our environment and who takes out the trash, and what we're going to do to improve our courts. And so this is I think something that more people need to know and understand about how our laws are made. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I kind of wanted to ask, I'm quite sure with you being young and beautiful, that you are a example to so many young Black girls. And, I remember you were on a podcast. I think it was the Run for Something podcast, like maybe 2019 or 18, with Mary Manugian.
Mari.
And yep,
Yes.
yep, Mari Manugian. And you guys were kind of talking about your experiences being so young and being women. And so what advice would you give to young girls who want to be? I know one of my friends, Caprice Jackson, she's actually like, she says she's like Olivia Pope, and always loved that character in that show, where she wants to be this
She worked for me.
she
She was my staffer.
oh,
Yeah, she was
okay,
one of
wow.
my first staffers when I.
You know what? She said that I'm actually a part of something called Black Women Win Michigan. And,
Yeah.
we were in that cohort together, like the inaugural cohort. And, we were able to, just kind of talk. And there's so many, the whole aim of the program is to, bring these talented Black women and uplift their voices, so that, people know that we're out here, and encourage them to run for office. We want to see more Black women in government in Michigan. And so, I just kind of want to know, like, what would you say to encourage, that next generation, those Gen Zers, and or, folks who are maybe even millennials who want to, continue, like maybe they lost a race, or they want to get involved and don't even know where to start. So what advice would you give to political hopefuls, particularly Black women?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to get involved in your community. I think it's important, if you're going to be a public servant, you have a record of public service, outside of, wanting to change things, because there are multiple ways to change things and to get involved. But you want to make sure that you're known for that you're in those spaces, right? And that you're meeting with the right people and things like that. So if you're in the community, and you will know your mayor, you'll know your city council, the people that influence, your community. So that would be my first thing. My second thing is don't wait to be asked. I think as women, and particularly as Black women, we always want to wait for, someone to say you're good enough. Sorry.
No, or we think we need one more accolade. We think we need one more degree, or
We need
one
to
more, I need more experience. And you undercut your own experience and your lived experience by thinking it's not enough, that imposter syndrome.
Exactly. So I was reading this article about men versus women and applying for jobs. And they were saying, like, men, if as long as they have like 80% of the qualifications, they'll apply. But women will have to have 90 to 100% of the qualification before they'll even apply, right? And so I think that that's really interesting and telling, and why most women have to be asked to even run for office. And as I'm sitting here, myself included, I was asked, um, but get involved in your community, find really, really great mentors. Um, Ask people, will you be my mentor if you think that they're doing something? I make sure I have about 5 mentees at any given time, and I just pour into them because what I don't want is I get to a place in my career and I look behind me and there's nobody else. And so I like to say, lift as you climb. And so, as someone is pulling you up and mentoring you, make sure you're mentoring someone else so that we can make sure that we're in positions of power going forward and there's no vacancy or void if one of us decides to take a step back or retire or whatever. We have to really build a bench, I like to say, and lift as we climb. And so get involved in your community, find excellent mentors or people that you look up to, and just do it.
Right. Just do it. You heard it first, right here. And I just think that that's a really important, like you said, it's pretty much don't climb up the ladder and then snatch it up from the next person and just, hold on to it. You have to each one teach one and make sure you're reaching back and giving back. So I love that. I love that. Speaking of, legacies and giving back, your daughter's name is prominently right there behind you. And we talked about how, you were expecting, and then of course, still like giving 110% out there, campaigning. And even now, your baby Emerson was born in August. And as a new mom, what is the legacy of that you would like to hand over to her, as a Michigander? And would you like to see her continue to stay in Michigan? I mean, I work in economic development, and I know that, Michigan's economy and, like, the Detroit area that I grew up in, we've gone through some ups and downs. We experienced the largest municipal bankruptcy. And so Detroit is still emerging and we're still growing. And, as a result, a lot of folks, the next generation we're hopeful that they'll stay in Michigan, that they'll, find jobs here, and that when they have bright parents, that they'll continue to have the resources to thrive here. And so, what is the Michigan you'd like to, as a, okay, we're going to be talking down the line. So you're a former state rep and current Michigan Supreme Court justice, hopefully after next week. And, so your legacy that you have left and, what you would like her to, have as a Michigan resident, as a future.
Yeah, well, I think the state of Michigan is wonderful. And I've always wanted my friends and family to stay here. And I think it was in college too, where I realized that so many people had no intention of staying in Michigan. We educate the best and brightest. We have some of the best colleges and universities, and we have people fleeing the state, going to other places like Georgia and California and New York and DC and all these different places. And so um, we talk about quality of life, and especially as a state representative, and usually people talk about education and taxes and things like that. But I really think that justice is a part of that, right? When we had folks migrating from the South to escape, Jim Crow and, just discrimination, right? Or escape their conditions and come to the North and build homes. And a lot of people started working in the factories and things like that. That's kind of where Detroit was built. It was people migrating from the South because of those conditions, right? And so we know that people are not going to want to stay in a place that they don't feel like justice will be served, if they don't trust our justice system. And so my legacy, I hope that we can build systems and have conversations to have a better justice system so that people will want to stay in Michigan because they have an excellent quality of life, and they know that if anything happens, that they will be seen and heard, and they can trust our our justice system. That is the legacy that I hope to leave. And I do hope that my daughter decides to stay in Michigan for her future.
Beautifully said. And yeah, Michigan is definitely a great state with so many opportunities. And, I'm a history buff. I love looking at the history of how we produce stoves. And then we were, this auto industry hub. And so, we hope for great things for, Michigan in the years to come. And that we are the place that, welcomes everybody and brings in all the tech and, just great things ahead. So, I hope your daughter has a beautiful, bright future, and I know she will because you're her mom. So I want to thank you so much for, answering my questions because I'm nosy. That's why I started this podcast, because I'm always like, can I pick your brain and ask you a million questions? And so, and I just fun story, everybody. I met Kyra, Rep Bolden at an event, and she was so encouraging because, I've been thinking about law school, and she's just like, yes, go for it. And, I know you can do this. And so you've definitely been my inspiration for, achieving and continuing to grow and evolve. So I want to thank you for being on the show, and for, just kind of all of the hard work that you've been putting into, the race for Michigan Supreme Court. Everybody vote on November 8th. So you still have time to vote. And so yes. So get out there, and it's GOTV time, everybody. So get out there and vote. And I also want to close by, saying, I'm thanking today's sponsor, 1000 Women Strong, and, just kind of talking about their mission to uplift women. And so their vision is to provide resources that support their efforts by creating a hub where Black women can organize and mobilize around the issues that impact us and our extended communities. So I want to thank you to them. And thank you so much for being on our show. All right.
Thank
Bye,
you so
everybody.
much. Appreciate it. 5 days. Let's
All
go.
right. Any other closing thoughts?
Make sure you vote in the nonpartisan section of your ballot. You have to bubble us in. A lot of people vote straight ticket and they say, I voted for you. And I said in the nonpartisan section, and then they have to think about it. You have to bubble in myself and Justice Bernstein for your vote to count. And if you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, I turned in my absentee ballot and I didn't vote in the nonpartisan section, or if you're not sure, you can go to your local clerk's office and spoil your ballot, and you can re-vote.
Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yes, you can spoil your ballot and re-vote if you're not sure if you voted in the nonpartisan section. The nonpartisan section is where you have your judges and your school board members. Very, very important. You want to vote the entire ballot, and remember to vote for the B team, Bernstein and Bolden. And also follow us on social media at Bolden for Justice, or my personal is at Kyra H. Bolden. And I promise I have interesting content for you. So please follow us. Please, please, please vote. Take 10 people with you to vote, and let's go win on Tuesday.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you all for viewing out there. All right.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Okay, end of the live. And goodbye. Thank you so much for watching out there and listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and for watching via the YouTube playback. And thanks so much. Remember to subscribe, like, comment if you like social commentary and language learning content. All right.